Blake Lively has finally sat down for her deposition. And I'll bet Blake, who's clearly speaking to the media and painting this as a victim of Justin's, Friedman's team shouldn't have to give all this client information and
Picture this. Blake Lively sitting in a cold conference room, lawyers on both sides locked in silence as the camera rolls. For 40 minutes, she answers calmly, diplomatically. And then, a question drops that makes her grip the table. Eyes flash, voice rise. That's the moment you saw online, but that clip doesn't tell the full story. This is the chain of events and the unseen footage that turns a viral meltdown into something very different.
Something a lot of Team Blake is sharing this morning. A lot of evidence has been dropping, Ron, and a lot of people are getting nervous. Here's one of Blake's biggest fans saying, since the beginning, Wayfair have insisted they may have planned to launch a smear campaign but never executed on it. This email ends that defense. Justin and his team have now openly admitted to everything they stand accused of. This is now a theory in Reddit saying game over. The document that says game over, this sort of makes it a little broader, but the team, here's the letter in question, if you guys want to focus, from someone who I guess worked at Tag, or is it Jed? Either way, one of the PR companies that they're alleging ran this smear campaign.
It started in the middle of the night. No one knew who posted it first, but a grainy 15-second clip of Blake Lively in what looked like a legal setting quietly appeared on an anonymous account. Within an hour, it was bouncing between Twitter timelines, then TikTok For You pages. The first people who saw it shared it not because they cared about the case, but because it felt raw, unfiltered, like watching a private wall crack in public. That's the type of content the internet eats alive. The video itself was dimly lit, framed from a low angle at one end of a long conference table. You could hear the faint buzz of an overhead light. Blake's posture started upright, hands folded on the table, her expression neutral. Then something shifted. Her shoulders squared forward, her jaw tightened, and her tone snapped from controlled to something sharper. It wasn't a scream, but it was a sudden break from the calm she'd held before. Almost instantly, TikTok had stitched it into their daily content. Edits looped the moment where she leaned in, eyes narrowing, while captions claimed she was finally showing her true colors, or ending her own career in real time. On Twitter, still frames of her mid-sentence were paired with wild commentary. Some users joked about Blake Lively and her villain era. Others accused her of arrogance. None of them had any interest in the 40 minutes that came before or after. Instagram gossip pages and influencer accounts smelled engagement bait. They reposted it with captions like, "The mask slipped," or "Yikes." PR teams hate this one. Meme accounts cut the sound entirely, overlaying dramatic music or reality TV-style subtitles that didn't match her actual words. Each repost stripped away another layer of what really happened, replacing it with whatever narrative fit that creator's audience. By the next morning, hashtags like Sean Blake Breakdown and Courtroom Clapback were trending across multiple platforms. People who had never watched a single interview of hers before weighed in on her personality, her marriage, her career. The internet wasn't talking about a deposition anymore. They were talking about a public meltdown. The speed was brutal. By lunchtime, multiple entertainment outlets had turned the clip into front-page stories. Headlines screamed about her outburst and shocking behavior, all sourced from the same 15 seconds that had been chopped, filtered, and shared into oblivion. No one paused to ask if it was edited or pulled out of context. The pace didn't allow for it, but here's the thing. No one outside that room knew what led up to that tense moment. So, what exactly was missing from the clip that turned an ordinary legal exchange into a viral scandal?
According to TMZ and at various other outlets, Blake Lively has finally sat down for her deposition. And I'll be honest, it surprised me because I didn't think she was gonna. But she'd continue to find more excuses. The fact that she's now sat for a deposition makes me think a settlement is now even further away from a possibility. I now actually, and I never really fully believed we'd go see this to court. But now that she's had to sit for the depo, I could see this really going all the way to court now, which would be in March. So big day. For those of you unfamiliar what a deposition is, this is the chance for Justin's side to question her under oath, to really get the facts from her. And she's got to sit there and answer everything. She can't just ignore it or say no. She's got to answer questions and she's got to tell the story. And will that story match up to her testimony later in court? That's what's going to be up for debate. So do I think there were fireworks? I don't like to speculate, but yes. The fact that Justin stepped up and showed up, which he's absolutely obligated to do and should do, because they're asking questions of her, and the only other person there who can really dispute or challenge is him. Now, while he can't sit there and like challenge her in the moment, he can take a break with the lawyers and they can ask him, what should we ask, what's going on? And so I imagine there was a lot of breaking in moments where he was sort of telling them how she, this or that, so they could then practice and prep their next round of questionings. So to be a fly on the wall, I don't expect us to hear more about this. I hope we don't. This shouldn't leak. Like, this should come out as evidence later, because if it does, it is going to make Justin's team look bad. Like, they're out there trying to make this and get stuff out there. Now, Blake's team is also clearly leaking things. I don't know who else would have spread the word that Blake's facing down her nemesis, Justin Baldoni. You go to People magazine and their headline is Justin attends in surprise move. No, it's not. It's not a surprise move, people. You scumbags.
Ever notice how a video can feel completely different when you see just a few extra seconds? That's exactly what happened here. The viral moment that blew up your feed wasn't the whole deposition. It was a narrow slice pulled from a much longer exchange, and the missing parts change everything. The footage came from a closed-door deposition recorded on standard legal cameras. The full file runs just over 40 minutes. In it, Blake answers a wide range of questions in a steady, low tone, even when pressed on uncomfortable topics. Watching start to finish, it's clear that for most of that time, she's measured, patient, and giving detailed responses without hesitation. But the version that went viral? It cut away every part where she acknowledged questions respectfully, clarified her points, and even smiled at times. You can pinpoint the edit points. They're abrupt, with small jumps in her posture and missing connective sentences. These jumps slice out exactly the parts that set up and explain the exchange before her sharper response. One of the biggest omissions was a question about her role in a specific business decision, involving language that implied personal wrongdoing. In the unedited tape, she calmly disputes the premise, citing dates and documented approvals. Only after the questioning was repeated more forcefully does her tone rise. That first half, the calm rebuttal, never made it online. There are also moments right before the supposed flashpoint where she turns to her lawyer, confirming she can answer fully, and then does so without hostility. Those are gone. Without them, the clip feels like an unprovoked snap. Her legal team later pointed out that the viral version's audio doesn't fully line up with her lip movements in certain frames, raising questions about whether it had been spliced. As for who could have leaked the source material, insiders say the original recording would have been accessible only to a short list of parties: court services, both legal teams, and select staff with clearance. That's not a wide pool, but it leaves room for personal motives, opportunism, or even settling unrelated scores. Seeing the footage as it was intended to be seen paints a completely different picture. She's poised, focused, and willing to stand her ground without crossing lines. Suddenly, the viral Blake Lively meltdown looks less like reality and more like a snippet crafted to stir outrage. And if one heavily edited moment can flip how millions of people see a public figure overnight, imagine what happens when that narrative starts taking a toll beyond the internet.
To know that she finally did her deposition is a big deal. It's a big deal. Now, on top of that, lawyers were feuding yesterday in a hearing over the subpoenas, which affects me as well as Candace Owens and Perez Hilton, etc. And it's interesting because they are now, as you know, other content creators and press and outlets are all sort of trying to quash their subpoenas. And so Lively wanted to subpoena the Liner Friedman office, which is Friedman's office. She suspects that Friedman is part of Baldoni's supposed ongoing smear campaign against her, and that Friedman is using his deep Rolodex of influencer clients to circulate the campaign online. We certainly did not pay content creators, Liner Friedman attorney Garofalo said in Wednesday's hearing. The attorney argued that Lively's subpoenas, which seek information about agreements between content creators and Friedman, are overly burdensome to the firm, risk breaching privilege, and should be quashed. She also claimed that no such agreements exist, prompting the judge to question why he needed to rule on the issue in the first place. Why are you asking me to write an opinion saying you don't have to answer the question that you've answered here today in front of the crowd? It's a good question. This is exactly the point of you don't want to say too much. By now admitting that no agreements exist, well, then why can't you say that on record and show it? And so it's a game of they're all playing to be careful because Friedman's team shouldn't have to give all this client information and people. Just because he gave statements to press doesn't mean that's a smear campaign. This idea that there are agreements, clearly, it makes no sense. They go in further about Perez Hilton. Again, not trying to beef or throw shade at Perez Hilton, but he's not the most popular person online. He hasn't for a long time. A lot of people have grown to like him again. He seems to be trying to put on a good leaf. I hope that's true. Great for him. But the problem is he has a history. His history is so bad, even the Wayfarer parties called him out as irrelevant. They called him out as not a good person, etc., in their own text exchange that Blake Lively uncovered. So this idea that Wayfarer, Friedman, would employ Perez Hilton, of all people, to create an agreement with and risk losing their own license to practice law?
This wasn't just another celebrity trending topic. Behind the gossip and clips, there were real contracts, real projects, and numbers that could wipe out years of income. At the exact time the Deposition video surfaced, Blake was in the middle of negotiations for 2 feature films, a streaming limited series, and at least 3 active brand partnerships. One of those brands had already planned a major holiday ad campaign with her front and center. Those meetings stopped almost immediately after the footage started circulating. No official statement, just sudden radio silence. People inside the industry say the shift was fast. Calls went unanswered, emails went from warm to cold. Casting discussions for a high-profile studio project quietly removed her name from the shortlist, even though she'd been considered a frontrunner. Studio executives didn't want to inherit whatever headlines she might bring along. In their world, it's easier to pivot than to fight a narrative. The brand fallout was subtler but just as telling. A luxury fashion house that had worked with her on multiple campaigns never confirmed their usual spring shoot. The styling board had been prepared, the creative direction signed off, yet weeks passed with no movement. Insiders whispered that the board was instructed to explore alternative faces for the season. An entertainment lawyer familiar with talent contracts explained how this works behind the curtain. Many deals come with reputational morality clauses. If a public incident could be seen as damaging to the brand's image, partners can walk away without owing a cent. A viral video implying courtroom arrogance, even if misleading, could easily be seen as bad optics. That's all it takes to trigger those clauses. Public sentiment didn't help her case. Social media analysis in the days after the leak showed a sharp swing in mentions from positive to overwhelmingly negative. Even neutral or supportive voices were drowned out by mocking edits and threads speculating about her personality. For casting departments and brand boards monitoring public reaction, those charts become part of the decision-making process. One insider confirmed that she lost a coveted film role at a major studio directly after the clip went global. It wasn't framed as punishment, just business. The project's insurance and marketing teams didn't want to take what they called a reputational risk. Losing that role didn't only cut a significant paycheck, it reinforced the narrative her critics were already pushing. Entertainment blogs ran headlines linking the loss to her meltdown, even though they hadn't seen the full tape. And as the doors kept closing, her inner circle realized this wasn't a temporary storm. Hollywood was reacting in real time, and that meant moving into full-on emergency mode.
To respond to what's out there and to this case that Lively has posted. Just because she makes allegations and files stuff or makes an article in the New York Times doesn't mean it's true. That's what the trial's for. And while this goes on, both parties, Blake and Justin's sides, can, say what they want to defend themselves. So fast forward, okay, we move on. Along with the letter, Fritz submitted the transcript of the deposition. However, it was sealed to the public in accordance with Lively's protective order. Now, there's a question of should they have the whole filing, whatever, but apparently they can, and they did, and she has every right to then, seal it. It was sealed in the public accordance with Lively's protective order and asked that the court not rule on the seal for a week so that the parties can meet and confer, and Miss Lively may file a motion for continued sealing if she so chooses. Now, this then prompted a bunch of PR, seemingly from Blake's side. Oh, look, he's shaming us. He's putting this out there. How dare they? This is this is about a media campaign. Meanwhile, it's Blake who's clearly speaking to the media and painting this as a victim of Justin's actions, which this is all just legal actions that they're allowed to do. But this was the press wave that then went and People, Deadline, all over the place of Blake slamming Justin.
Behind the perfect red carpet looks and curated Instagram posts, those next few days were pure chaos. Calls were flying back and forth at all hours. From the moment her team realized just how fast the clip was spreading, the response wasn't slow or cautious. It was immediate. PR staff, legal advisors, and even digital consultants were all looped in before sunrise. The goal was simple: contain it before it got any worse. Two strategies sat on the table, and neither was risk-free. One side wanted to release the full deposition video, trusting that uncut context would undercut the meltdown headlines. The other side warned that putting out all 40-plus minutes would only refresh the news cycle, take the story wider, and give people more material to tear apart. Every hour spent debating felt like another hour of reputational damage. In the background, her lawyers began making private calls to editors at major entertainment outlets. The ask wasn't always to delete the story. Sometimes it was to tweak a headline, bury it lower on the site, or add a vague update mentioning that the video was edited. Some responded. Others didn't. At the same time, a specialist firm was brought in to manage search results. That meant pushing unrelated content about her hire on Google, so the leaked clip would slide further down the page for casual searchers. There was also a careful coordination of silence. Close friends and former co-stars were quietly messaged not to comment, not even in a lighthearted way. Any public defense could be framed as biased, and any joke could be clipped into a meme that kept the fire burning. Behind the scenes, it was a controlled freeze-out to starve the algorithm of new content. By the third day, her team had narrowed down who could have leaked the original footage to a very small list. That finding changed everything. The idea that this wasn't some random accident but a targeted release made the response even more urgent. Yet knowing who might have been involved and proving it were two very different things. And legal proof takes time the internet doesn't care about. Even with all the calls, the suppression tactics, and the silence from her circle, the clip had already taken root. Fan accounts reposted it every few hours. Meme pages remixed it with new captions. Every re-upload kept the moment alive, beyond the reach of any takedown request. And in an online world where one frame can outweigh years of work, that's the part every public figure has to be ready for. If this could happen to Blake Lively, is any celebrity really safe? One moment she was in the middle of a controlled legal process. The next, she was the lead character in the internet's latest morality play. Her case shows how a single, isolated moment can be stripped of its context and used to rewrite a public image almost overnight. People weren't reacting to her career, her past work, or her overall behavior. They were reacting to a looped 15 seconds that fit an easy, shareable story. The speed of viral outrage rarely matches the speed of corrections. Even if the truth comes out later, the first version is what sticks. You can release a full video, hire a lawyer, beg platforms to promote the updated facts. It doesn't matter. The initial wave hits harder, spreads faster, and clings longer. By the time a more accurate narrative surfaces, interest has already moved on. The damage, however, stays in place. It's not new to see careers bend or break under the weight of a viral clip. A late-night talk show joke twisted out of context, a backstage phone video edited for shock value, even an off-camera remark from a live stream. All have knocked actors, hosts, and musicians out of jobs within days. Each time, the internet audience acts as judge and jury, often before basic fact checks are in place. Part of the problem is the way virality works. Algorithms push what gets clicks, comments, and shares. There's no built-in pause for verification. The more a clip triggers strong reactions, the more reach it gets. A misleading but attention-grabbing snippet can outperform a full, accurate version by millions of views. The platforms profit from that engagement spike through ads, and controversy is one of the most reliable triggers to keep people scrolling. Experts on cancel culture often point out that these moments don't function like old publicity scandals. There's no grace period to get ahead of a story. It's an instant pile-on, multiplied by influencers, reaction accounts, and gossip blogs. For public figures, each one of those reposts turns into more perception shift, which can impact endorsements, casting, and even personal relationships. Blake's incident is already being flagged in PR discussions as a perfect case study of how not to underestimate a small leak. It's a turning point because it underlines that, in the digital age, a career's public side is only as strong as its most viral moment. And until something changes in how we consume these snippets, the culture of snap judgment will keep making examples out of even the most media-savvy stars. Which leaves one more question. After all this, how did she decide to handle the fallout? 15 seconds. That's all it took to flip a decade of carefully built reputation into a headline-ready scandal. One moment's framing became the entire story, and the rest, no matter how solid, vanished from view. It's a reminder that the first version you see online is often the least complete one, and maybe the most dangerous. People don't rewind, they react. And when the reaction sticks, it can shape what doors open or slam shut. Still, those closest to her say she's not finished. How she moves next could be the part no one saw coming, and that's what everyone's watching for.